where are you in your collective impact initiative right now? Are you early on, and sort of what brought you to collective impact?
Sure. Well, I would say right now we're at the phase 2 initiating action phase, although you do sort of feel like you kind of go, these phases feel somewhat fluid, because when I look back at my 7 years with Pathway to Potential, in a lot of ways, all of those years were really, doing a lot of these different things. Assessing the readiness of the community, I think, was really important. And I think in some of those years, we did take a stab at many actions that I think were really trying to engage influential champions. But I think overall, if I look at sort of the evolution of Pathway to Potential, I think what we found is that we sort of made a splash in the community when we launched, and we tried to set up a big sort of infrastructure or structure, I would say, with a round table and several working groups. But I think, to your points about, what is your ask? I think at that time, because we were so early on in the work, we didn't really have that nailed down. We weren't able to tell business leaders in the community exactly what they were coming to these monthly meetings for. So I think we've really done a lot of assessment in the community, and we've put a lot of emphasis on creating the urgency in the community and figuring out ways to communicate about poverty so that there is a greater sense of urgency, because I think that's been something that we've recognized, that poverty remains fairly hidden in the community in a lot of ways, despite our best efforts.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about who you've had at the table before, and so core to making some of your progress has been bringing the right people to your table. So in this collective impact model, it's your influential champions. Let's talk about this a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about who you were talking with already in your network? And it doesn't necessarily need to be the particular organizations, but the type of organizations. And then how did you move beyond your existing network?
Sure. I think for most of those 7 years, a lot of the most invested and engaged partners in our network, which is quite broad. I mean, we have dozens and dozens of organizations and people who are very committed to poverty reduction, but I think for the most part, we're talking a lot about the social sector, the not-for-profit sector, some broader public sector. We are funded by the municipality, by the city and the county, so we definitely have elected officials who are invested in our work, so that's a huge benefit. But overall, I think one of our big gaps that we had been identifying was the fact that we weren't necessarily engaging really influential business leaders in our work on a consistent basis. So that was partly the genesis for this new collective impact model that we're embarking on now, which was really a question about how can we better align poverty reduction goals and economic development goals in our community. Because what we had been finding is that, in our circles, Pathway to Potential's network, we're talking a lot about poverty issues. People sort of understand the barriers, and they understand the distinctions between generational poverty and working poverty and many of these things. But then our network was starting to notice, and our leadership team was starting to notice, that there's this parallel conversation in the community about economic development that seemed completely disconnected from poverty. And so that was a big revelation for us, and I think that was really one of the motivators, is that how do we start to make these connections and recognize that collective prosperity and poverty reduction are, they're two sides of the same coin, that we can't really have a conversation about economic development without acknowledging poverty and really understanding the poverty context in our community. So that got us starting to talk to people who we wouldn't really talk to, who were our unusual suspects. And I should say, just by way of context, that we got, through the OTF, we got seed funding to embark on this collective impact exploration. So we applied for seed funding to really investigate that question: can we better align poverty reduction goals and economic development goals through collective impact? So back in March, we met with our Economic Development Corporation, with the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, with academic institutions, hospitals, you know, a lot of young entrepreneurs, young leaders in the community. So really tried to tap into a cross-section of folks that we don't necessarily talk to on a regular basis to just find out, what do you even think about poverty? I mean, is this on your radar? Do you think that this lack of alignment is even an issue? So we really didn't approach it with, we didn't want to approach it having, you know, these solid answers. We wanted to kind of leave it very open-ended to kind of get the temperature of the community and see where people are at.